Guys, what's up? Welcome back to today's edition of the Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to spend some time with me on the video. Always very grateful for that. Guys, today we're going to have a little seminar on fishing line as far as how to choose the right pound test line, talk a little bit about when you want braided fluorocarbon mono, just sort of have a good well-rounded foundation to sort of take the intimidation out of when you got a spool up line, or make some considerations on determining what type of line and what size of line to use. So get into that in today's video. Also, guys, just a quick invitation out there. Anyone interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, you can do that by going to my Facebook page, Randy Blockett, Professional Angler. Just shoot me a message and I'll get you all the info for that. So much appreciated. Okay, guys, fishing line, there's a lot to consider when you're talking about fishing line here. A lot of different variables with it. So what I want to try to do is I sort of want to give you guys sort of a simple foundation to determine which type of line to use in the pound test that you want to use. So first of all, let's talk about the three different basic types of line, which are fluorocarbon, monofilament, and braided line. Now, if you're not real familiar, a lot of the guys, I know on the Fishing Teacher here, we have, guys starting out fishing at different levels. So basically the difference in the three is fluorocarbon line, like the Seaguar and Vizex here. Also, guys, I will put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description to all the line, and if you guys want to use that link to purchase some line or any other equipment, it's a good way to support the channel, but I'll link it in the description. But fluorocarbon line is probably the most popular line in today's fishing because it's really invisible, it's hard to see, it's low diameter, and it has a lower stretch than monofilament. So therefore, fluorocarbon line is a really good choice under most fishing situations. I use fluorocarbon line probably, I'm going to guess, 95% of the time. I use it on all my crankbaits, my jerk baits, any slow bait that I have, jigs, shaky head, drop shots, any bait that I'm fishing on the bottom, swim baits, basically 95% of my fishing. You can pretty much get away, if you wanted to, you could pretty much get away with fluorocarbon with the exception of one application for monofilament, because monofilament line, if you're not familiar with that, that's the traditional line. It's been around forever. Monofilament line compared to fluorocarbon is a little bit larger diameter and it's quite a bit more stretchy. So if you set the hook with monofilament, if you set the hook from 30 foot away with monofilament line, then you set the hook 30 foot away with fluorocarbon line, you will notice a significant difference in how much stretch is in that monofilament. You can take a piece of monofilament line and you can stretch it and you can feel the stretch. You can with fluorocarbon a little bit, but not quite as much. So that's the main difference. And also, monofilament line will float a lot more than fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon tends to sink in the water, so therefore it's not a good choice if you're fishing a topwater lure. So if you guys are fishing like a chugger, some type of, walking topwater, wake bait, anything like that, something that sits still on the surface, you want to use monofilament line all the time because it'll help keep that bait higher. If you try to use fluorocarbon line with like a walking topwater, like a Xerospook or something, the line will sink and it'll cause that nose to dive into the water. So never use any type of a stationary or moving type of topwater with fluorocarbon line, with the exception of like a buzz bait. A buzz bait or a whopper plopper, something that you're reeling constantly where it's not sitting there, you can use fluorocarbon line. And finally, the braided line. Braided line doesn't have any stretch. It's like using a piece of rope. The drawbacks of braided line is the fact that it doesn't stretch and the fact that it's more visible in the water, because braid tends to get more visible the more you fish it because the color washes off of it. Say if you're using a green or black, it sort of gets a little bit more brighter. So it's high visibility, it's no stretch, are the disadvantages. The advantages behind of it is the fact that there is no stretch and you got more power with it. Now, sometimes you don't want any stretch. Say, for example, if you're fishing a frog or, some super thick cover over matted vegetation, you want pure power. You don't want any stretch when you set that hook because you need to get that fish out of that heavy cover. That's going to be the big advantage of braid. So the only times that I use ever braid, guys, is I use it for my frog fishing. Sometimes on a buzz bait, I'll use it for pitching and flipping, like a 1 ounce sinker, matted vegetation, something along those lines. But overall, I'm using, fluorocarbon 95% of the time. Now, your line size considerations, line sizes in fluorocarbon line, like I use in the Vizex, anything between 4 to 25 pound test line. I literally use 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, and 25. Now, for the most part, I'll start high and go low. My heavy lines, like the 20 and 25 pound test lines, I'm using for, pitching and flipping, shallow water power fishing with jigs, creature baits, that type of deal, where I'm penetrating cover. 20 and 25 line pound tests I also use like with big glides baits, big swim baits, spinner baits, like larger spinner baits. Sometimes I'll use 20. Anytime that I need more power. That's the main thing about heavier line. And also the bait will fall slower the heavier line they're using. So that's another consideration. Now my 15 and 17 pound test line tests, a little bit more diversity there. Those type of lines I'm using a lot of times with crankbaits. Sometimes I'm using more of a casting, a Texas rig worm, casting a Cinco, maybe some lighter pitching and flipping on some lighter sinkers, that type of deal. A lot of horizontal presentations with it. The 10 and 12 pound test lines, those tend to be more for smaller crankbaits and more finessey presentations, like again, maybe like a wacky rig or some light Texas rig, floating worm, fluke, something like that. And the light lines, the 4 to 10 pound test lines, that's my spinning rod setup. And that's my finesse presentations for drop shot, shaky head, Ned rig, small crankbaits, jerk baits, anything that you need a little bit more finessey. But the thing that you want to try to do, there's like a fine line. You want to try to use the heaviest line that you can get by with that does not affect the amount of strikes you get or the action of your lure. So that's what you're always trying to find, is you're trying to find this balance between getting strikes and getting the fish in the boat versus, using the right pound test line. Obviously the reason I like to use heavier if I can get by with it is you're not going to break off as much. Your chances of breaking off are reduced. You never know when there's a stump 5 feet into water and that fish gets wrapped around that stump and you need some extra power. So that's on my mind, but sometimes it just doesn't work that way. Sometimes you got to use real light line. I've had to use 4 and 6 pound test line a lot of times when I'm fishing like a little Ned rig on a light head, or say if I'm fishing a jerk bait that I need to get that bait really deep, I'll go to lighter line. So there's always a bunch of different considerations in that. So when you're determining, what pound test line, just try to analyze the situation and try to find a balance between the efficiency of the lure, the efficiency of the line and getting the fish in the boat, and the lightness of the line that generates the strike, and don't take any action away from the lure. Another thing is, like, if you put a crankbait on 10 pound test line and then you put the same crankbait on 25 pound test line, the 25 pound test line is going to make the bait perform a lot different. It's going to run shallower. It's probably going to take a little bit of the action away from it. So you just sort of have to experiment with that a little bit. But that's just a general foundation for line guys. It's just, using it, experiment, and see what works best for you. But like I said, if you guys are interested in getting some, I would highly suggest the Seaguar and VizX, guys. I've been using this line forever. Super strong, super supple, abrasion resistant. I just love this line. Again, I'll link it in the description of the video. So talk later. See you guys.